Okay, lecture 2 of chapter 12. Last time we were discussing historically important infectious diseases. And we looked at just a few and didn't go over too many details because I wanted to focus more on the emergent diseases. So we talked about the plague, malaria, and tuberculosis. Malaria, especially, is a disease we're still dealing with right now. And tuberculosis also is very important. Now, let's look forward to emergent diseases. And by emergent, I mean historically recently emerging diseases, and including COVID-19. We're also going to include that in our discussion for this chapter. So here are the ones we're going to look at. HIV is the virus. AIDS is the autoimmune deficiency syndrome, the actual disease itself. Talk about Ebola, mad cow disease, bird flu / the avian flu. We'll go into West Nile virus, and then we'll end with COVID-19. So a lot of very important diseases to talk about. So let's start with HIV/AIDS. So this type of disease can be spread by bodily fluids. So it's commonly, mostly is given to others through sexual activity or sharing needles, things like that. So it's pretty difficult to get, but it's easy enough to get that it's spread quite a bit. And according to the statistics from our book, 33 million are infected right now, and 25 million people have died from AIDS. So very significant, obviously. And it's tough to treat, and they're expensive drugs, but recently, very fortunately, there's new antiviral drugs that are able to keep the HIV population inside people's bodies really low, so it does not completely rid the system of the virus that causes AIDS, but it keeps it so low that your life extension is getting more similar to someone without AIDS. Africa, there's a huge issue with HIV-positive people. So I went to the CDC website to kind of get some more information. And where did this come from? And where's a lot of these viruses come from? Well, in this case, they found out that a specific type of chimpanzee had a very similar immunodeficiency virus inside their system, and it's most likely the cause where it came from. Some sort of animal to human contact, and then that virus then changes a little bit such that it can jump from humans to humans. So it started probably back in the 1800s, but over the decades it started to spread across the world, and it really popped up in the US in the 1970s and 1980s. And if you go to this website, the basics website here, there's a really interesting timeline too. It goes and shows the first case in the 1980s of this immunodeficiency disorder, where people are coming in and getting rare types of cancers and pneumonia, and they didn't know why. Like, why were these seemingly previously healthy people all of a sudden have really poor immune systems? And because of this virus. So the virus takes over, really suppresses your immune system, and you are susceptible to a lot of things that otherwise you would combat with your normal healthy immune system. So that's the first one, and you'll notice this is just a little graphic from the book, thinking about different ways that these pathogens get transmitted. And really, a lot of these start with animal sources. We call these the reservoirs for the viruses, where they just kind of live. And the animals themselves might not be affected too badly by it. But if it somehow finds a way to jump from these animals to humans, that becomes a big issue because, like the coronavirus, it's brand new. So our body doesn't know what to do with it. We don't have an immune response. Usually our body is kind of combats things and remembers information about those immune responses. So let's go back to this list. So let's look at the next one of the more important emergent diseases, Ebola. This is pretty rare, honestly. You wouldn't really stumble into this in your day-to-day life. It's a rare virus, found in Central Africa. It gets its name from the Ebola River in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1976. There have not been any wide-scale epidemics. It is definitely a problem in Africa, and there's always the chance that these epidemics get out of hand. But we're doing a pretty good job there of containing it, but always can do a better job. And there's no vaccine yet. or any really good treatments. So it's a very dangerous disease if you're in that part of the world. And again, where did this come from? Well, as far as people understand, they have some sort of source. This one seems to come from bats. The evidence is showing that the reservoir hosts, as they're called, are bats. So bats are carrying this. They bite these animals who then transfer it. And then human comes in contact with these animals, maybe hunting them, eating their food. And then we finally get them. Then through traditional contact, you infect others. One of the big problems, though, in Africa is that they have these really traditional funeral practices where they're really in contact with the bodies. And it's been found that even these dead bodies can transmit the virus in the case of Ebola. So Ebola is pretty scary in that way. So it's really trying to train and change the mindset of people in these traditional practices to stop doing this, that they really need to let the authorities take the bodies away, bury them. But there's a big issue with transmission because of how the funeral practices go. So that is Ebola, not something we run into in America too often. Oh, here is a map from the CDC website showing kind of where the most of the cases are. You'll notice Democratic Republic of the Congo, quite a bit of these, and then on the western coast, there's quite a few cases as well. Again, if you go to this website, you can get more information on that. Another one we're going to talk about is something called mad cow disease, or BSE. Bovine something, I forget what that is called, but BSE, bovine something, is the official name for it. And this is an interesting one because it's caused not by a virus, not by a bacteria, but by these proteins. We call them poorly understood proteins. They're called prions. They're usually proteins in our body have a very specific structure to them, folded very specifically, and they function correctly because of that. Prions are proteins that are misfolded a little bit, and they have this odd ability that when they interact with a healthy protein, it causes that healthy protein to misfold. And that has this chain reaction, and those cause healthy proteins to misfold. And if you're doing that, you're changing the proteins to something where now they can start to clump up next to each other and form plaques and form these tissues in our body that shouldn't be there. And then also those proteins might have had a function before, and now they no longer have their current function because these prions have changed the function of other proteins. So mad cow disease is one of these where cows, they might have this problem, this BSE disorder, and if those prion proteins are physically transferred to a human, we can actually get this disease. So basically, you do not want to eat cows that have these prions. And now there's really strict control in place of testing cows to make sure that meat is not getting into our supply. This was a really big problem in the United Kingdom. That was really where most of this epidemic happened. It's called an epizootic. I'm not exactly sure how to say that, but it's like an epidemic, but it's epidemic within an animal population. So back in 1993, it really peaked. You notice 95, almost 15,000 cases, and then it steeply drops off as we go 5 years in the future. Now 2 cases in 2015. We've done a really good job of clamping down on mad cow disease. So a lot of these diseases that we talk about, you'll see that they're a big deal for a while, and then as we get better at controlling them and creating vaccines, they become non-existent or virtually non-existent. And hoping and praying that's what's going to happen with COVID-19. Right now, we are in the midst of one of these historical events where we have an epidemic. And in this case, it's a pandemic. It's across multiple, all over the world. But we're going to understand it better, and we will see these cases drop, just like any of these other infectious diseases. Another disease that originated in an animal, you'll see this theme here, is bird flu and the avian flu. So this is showing a worker making sure using personal protective equipment, mask, while feeding these chickens. And this one developed in Western Africa, and it's usually only affects other birds. However, when we see that virus jumping to humans, this is what happens. We get these novel kind of viruses. So the bird flu was really the first big deal with the bird flu was the Spanish flu, the Spanish influenza as it was referred to, and it killed 100 million people in 1918. So that was a devastating pandemic. And it's caused by this H1N1 virus inside these birds. So the more modern variant, though, so the one that came out of Asia, is caused by a different variant. Same family, but it's called H5N1. And yes, this does have the potential. The book, talks in these kind of dire terms sometimes. This is true, but I went to the CDC website and got some more information. And the age in H5N1 says is low. The risk is low. You still want to take precautions in Asia, dealing with birds, things like that. And there have been sporadic infections in Asia and Africa, but there have been no animal or human infections with Asian H5N1 in the United States. So again, it's a very localized one, but it's one of these, again, emergent diseases. This theme of a virus living kind of dormant in an animal, and it transfers to humans, and our human system doesn't know what to do with it, so it causes a lot of issues. So that brings us to COVID-19. So I wanted to include this just in case you haven't read a whole lot about this, although I'm sure most of you have read a lot about it on the news, but I just wanted to go through some of the information from the CDC website about this new emergent disease. So we've been commonly referring to it as the coronavirus. COVID-19 is the disease caused by this specific new coronavirus. And coronaviruses are large family viruses, so that are very common in all types of different animals. The problem with this one is that it's a very new one, so it's brand new to our bodies. Humans haven't been in contact with it before. So rarely they infect people and can spread. So we've had these in the past, the MERS outbreak and then the SARS outbreak. And now this one's very similar to that. At least that's what we're figuring it out. And this is specifically called the SARS-CoV-2, coronavirus 2 virus is the one that's causing COVID-19. So when people say coronavirus, we're meaning SARS-CoV-2, the new one that causes this disease. So early on it was patients they found out in Wuhan, the city of Wuhan in the Hubei province in China. A lot of them were linked to seafood markets and live animal markets. So they were thinking, okay, some sort of animal to spread. And then after there was animal to spread, the alarming part was that instead of just animal to spread, it was human to human, person to person spread. That means the virus actually had to change a little bit, some sort of mutation, for it to have the ability to actually jump to person. So that's the version that we're kind of dealing with now. It can spread human to human originally from some sort of animal market. So what does it cause and what is it like? And is it just the flu? Well, no, it's not just the flu because it's a new virus. Influenza is a different virus than a coronavirus. So the clinical picture is still, it's not fully known yet. But there's many, many, many mild illnesses. Some don't even report symptoms and they get better. Some obviously severe and some obviously pushing to death. The populations that really need to be careful are the older populations, or anybody, if you have chronic medical conditions, heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, for example, they seem to be at a higher risk. So those are the populations that need to be really careful, but we all need to be really careful because we don't want to help spread this disease. So I also pulled up, the slide is in the wrong spot. This was a slide about the West Nile virus, and sorry about that. This is just showing the West Nile virus in the United States, of which I don't know where my slides are. Well, that is fun. Looks like I lost my slides on the West Nile virus because clearly we jumped over it. West Nile virus, well, I'll talk about it now if I can't find them as I just kind of slide through. I'll talk about that for a second. West Nile virus came from mosquitoes in the West Nile region. So it's transmitted by mosquitoes to people, essentially. And they think, again, though, that came from bats originally, and then it got into mosquitoes. Actually, that's a lie. The reservoir is mosquitoes. I don't have my slides in front of me now. So I'm actually going to skip West Nile virus for now, and I'll talk about that later. So we'll come back to that. That's the last one. I want to make sure I have all my information correct. Again, that's right here on our list. So back to COVID-19. I pulled up the White House's official kind of 15-day plan to help slow the spread. So let's go through these. This will be part of our exam material. We're going to learn this together and make sure we all understand. So if you're sick, stay home. Doesn't matter what type of sick. If you feel like you have a cold, you feel like you have the flu, no matter what it is, stay home and contact your doctor. Same with your children. Keep them at home. If someone has tested positive for coronavirus, make sure no one leaves. Don't go to work or school, and contact your doctor. And if you're an older person, stay home and away from other people. That way you do not have come in contact with someone who might have the coronavirus. And if you also have some sort of underlying health condition, again, just stay away from people for a while. You do not want to come in contact with someone that has the virus and have it spread to you. The other parts, how can we help slow the spread of the coronavirus? I'm sure you've heard a lot about this as well. But the big thing is stay home if possible. Most schools have been canceled already, so we're all doing things online, obviously. If you do work in a critical infrastructure industry, maybe your parents do, make sure they're following all the CDC guidelines to protect their health. So if you're food supply, pharmaceutical, healthcare, things that are going to stay open. This is really huge. Do not go hang out with your friends. Even though we don't have a stay-at-home order in Wisconsin right now, just don't do it. 10 or more, I would say just stop for a while. I think it's about time to just chill at home for good for a long time. And clearly bars and restaurants have been closed. But even be careful with drive-through and pickup. Just keep away from people for a while and don't do so much of that. Don't shop unless you absolutely have to. I went to Costco one last time and spent like $250 on groceries. And I saw people there with their carts with like 3 things in it. And I just thought, why in the world do you have 3 things and you're at Costco? Should be taking, trips as needed, but do not do any kind of trips to Target. I used to love to go to Target, just kind of for fun and relaxing. I'm not going to be doing that for a long time. And do not visit nursing homes or long-term care facilities unless you're there to provide critical assistance. And the big thing here, even at home, if somehow the virus gets into your home, you want to make sure you still are really sanitary. Clean down your surfaces with disinfectant wipes, with bleach. Don't touch your face. Wash your hands often. If you order stuff from Amazon, I would wipe those down too. Wipe down the packages before you touch anything. And then just wash your hands after touching things that come from outside into your home. And we'll all do a good job of keeping this at bay for a while. So that'll be the end of this section. Let's go back. I'm still curious where my Nile virus slides went. They have disappeared. But this was this section. Emergent diseases, including COVID-19. These are all the more recent ones that the book highlights. There's many more, but these are the ones that I decided to look at for now. If you want more information, check out the CDC website. Again, this was to help us kind of understand other types of epidemics that have had in the past. COVID-19 is new, but we've gotten through them in the past, and we're going to get through this one. So good luck studying, and stay safe. I'll talk to you guys soon.